Hi, class. Hope you enjoyed reading the story Southpaw by Judith Viorst. You're supposed to have read this for today. If you have not done so, make sure that you pause this video and then read it. It's not very long. It's only a couple pages, and it's a pretty easy read, just being written in letter form. So I'm just going to keep going as if you have read already. Okay, so Southpaw. What is a Southpaw? And maybe you know this, maybe not, but there's a pitcher by the name of Steve Carlton. He was one of the best Southpaw pitchers. What does it mean? Well, take a look at where the ball is. What hand is he throwing with? His left. So a Southpaw is another name for a left-hander. All right, so now you know, in case you didn't already. Judith Viorst also wrote the story Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. This is a very common forensics piece that I've heard before, and probably her most famous work. Wrote this in 1972, and I didn't realize this, but maybe you did. Maybe you've seen this already, but this was made into a Disney movie. I don't know how you make a children's book into a full-length Disney movie, but apparently that was something that was done, and it was based on the book. Judith Viorst is still around today. She is an author of many works of fiction, nonfiction, not just for children, but also for adults as well. She attended Rutgers. There's also another biography in your book as well. When she wrote, she liked to challenge stereotypes of males and females. You'll see a little bit of that in the story, or you saw a little bit of that in the story Southpaw, where she kind of has the attitude like, girls can do boy stuff as well. And they don't just have to do ballet or knitting, but baseball, is something that girls can do. So she lives in Washington currently, and she's won many awards for her journalism and writings as well. Okay, so let's get into our story a little bit. So our story, it was entitled Southpaw, based on, we can conclude by that Janet was a left-hander, okay? And then notice the tagline there on top of the page 347, which is what you should be on right now. They used to be best friends, but now she hopes he gets cavities. What has he done? And there are some things, hints that they were good friends beforehand. Richard's goldfish, or Janet's goldfish is named Richard, for example. They've saved, Richard has saved seats for her on the bus, so we know they were friends. And what happened? Well, it sure seems like, because he won't accept her on the baseball team because she's a girl, that their friendship is a little strained. And so basically this whole story is just a back and forth between Richard and Janet. Does she really wish that he gets 20 cavities? That seems to be a little bit of an exaggeration. And so we'll talk a little bit about exaggeration in a literary term known as hyperbole. In hyperbole, that is another word for when exaggeration is used to overstate something just to prove a point. A lot of times it's a humorous one as well, and we would say there's some humor involved with this story as well. Let's go through some of the questions on page 350, and what I would encourage you to do is maybe pause the video, go through those questions and see if you can come up with the answers. Make sure you feel free to use your book during this as well. Okay, let's look at number 1. It says, how does Janet respond to Richard's refusal to let her play? I think I think she doesn't hold anything back. I think it's pretty clear. If she isn't good enough to play, then they're not good enough to be friends. And she further responds by showing how hurt she is, insulting him, hoping he gets cavities, and kind of says, she doesn't say that she would be the best player on the team, but she does say that she's a pretty good player and would help the team. Number 2, what does Richard say is his reason for not wanting Janet on the team? Because she's a girl. No girl has ever played on the Mape Street baseball team. And as long as I'm captain, no girl ever will. Stick to your knitting and your ballet. Pretty much where he's coming from. Number 3, what is Janet's attitude about girls in baseball? Well, I think she's positive that she can play as well as any boy. Maybe wouldn't be the best on the team, but she does point out and makes seems like she has too good of a time pointing out just how they are losing without her. And also she mentions that she has a high batting average as well. So she doesn't buy it. Number 4, why does Richard agree to let Janet play? Because his team has been steadily losing. He's been losing players to various things as well. And so finally he kind of, gives in and says, hey, would you want to play? What was the relationship? And I think it's kind of funny too that, Janet's not just content to play, but she also says, okay, sure, if I'm coming, it's a package deal. We got this girl, this girl, this girl, and this girl. And then they kind of compromise at the end by she substitutes a different girl. But, she's tough. She's hanging in there. She's speaking her mind. Okay, you can play outfield. I pitch. Okay, you can play first base. I pitch. So she's very insistent, and she's stubborn. Number 5, what was the relationship of Richard and Janet before this conflict? Well, we've mentioned how they were pretty tight, and this whole baseball thing kind of caused a little bit of a rift, which they seem to be okay by the end of the story. But and then hyperbole. Number 6, Janet uses hyperbole in her letters. What examples can you find? So hyperbole, if you exaggerate. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. That's a little bit of an exaggeration there. And that's an example of hyperbole. What are some examples of hyperbole in the story that you found? 20 cavities. Okay. She claims because of their losing streak that Richard is the laughing stock of New Jersey. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't know if everybody in New Jersey follows Little League Baseball. So that's hyperbole. That's an example. And again, she uses hyperbole in a very humorous way, which sets a good humorous tone, which is the intent of her writing. So number 7, what connotations do the words baseball, ballet, and knitting have? And do you think these connotations depend on whether you're a boy or a girl? So you would say that probably baseball is more associated with masculine, with boys. Ballet and knitting would be associated with girls. So yeah, these are connotations that are based on stereotypes and genders. You'll note that in the biography on the bottom of page 350, that it says that Judith Viorst often challenges traditional roles for boys and girls. So not just in this story, but in other stories, she's kind of known for that, to say that girls can do things that boys do as well, and makes a point in her characters of making sure that they don't just do girly stuff. Girls, they don't just do the knit sweaters and do whatever other stereotypes are usually associated with girls, but that they can do other things as well. Here's a question for you: if you were Janet, would you have wanted to play on Richard's team? What do you think? You'd almost be like, you know what? If you don't want me to play, I'm not going to push it. But she wouldn't give up, right? She just kept pushing it, and then when she got on, she insisted on the position that that she was trying to have. So, okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit more about the story. Obviously this whole story is a back and forth between Richard and Janet. They're writing notes to each other. The PSs are kind of meant for humorous as well. Oh, by the way, adding to the humor. And also, Richard eliminated, just know that Richard eliminated Janet from the baseball team because, his reason wasn't that she wasn't a good player. It was just because she's a girl and just haven't done that before. No girl has ever played on the team before. So what position did Janet want a place on the team? Very insistent that she pitched, right? So Richard considers letting Janet play, not because he's, sick of her bugging him, not so much because she's batting .345, but more because they're losing and he's losing players and he needs people. And so hyperbole, know that hyperbole is used in Southpaw to kind of heighten the effect of the comments, maybe some of the insults as well. And then as Janet feels that she has the upper hand in the negotiations, note that she tries to get other girls on the baseball team. When Janet says, on page 349, there's a quote there that Janet says, "I wasn't kicking exactly, I was kicking back." She's referring to just that she was hurt, that she was being excluded because she was a girl. So I was just kicking back. I was getting back at him for that, insulting me. So Janet definitely would be a person who would stand up for what she believes. She wouldn't back down. Even when she was given a spot on the team, she insisted that she had to pitch. Janet shows that she's not, however, unreasonable at the end. I don't know if you noticed this, but she does kind of play ball a little bit and negotiate a little bit with Richard. When he proposes Marilyn Jackson, he goes, "Not Marilyn Jackson, anyone but her." She suggests Lizzie Martindale instead. Well, okay, how about her? But she's still a girl, and Janet's still getting what she wants here. Judith Viorst, as we mentioned, like to challenge traditional roles of boys and girls in her stories. Richard agrees to let Janet play on the team. Do you think it's out of pity, though? Do you think he felt sorry for her? No, not really. I think he more felt sorry for himself and his team, dropping his players dropping like flies and not being able to play. And maybe a little bit of the losing streak as well. They were to see some of those scores, 28-0, 34-0. Ouch. And so Richard and Janet, we know, were friends before this. Janet doesn't necessarily go so far as to say she's the best on the team, but she's pretty good. Know that Janet uses hyperbole in her letters, of Judith Viorst, our author, uses words like ballet and knitting just to kind of prove a point that many people think that girls can only do one thing or certain things. Janet does not give in, right? Janet is going to stand up for what she believes, and she's not going to let that Richard have the last word. She's going to keep kicking back. This is a very unique way of writing a story, right? It's in a sense, it's almost easier to just kind of sit back and say, okay, this is what Richard did, this is what Janet did, this is a quote, this is what, but it's very interesting and maybe even fun for Judith to write the story in this way, because basically we get the whole story based on their back and forth notes to each other. It almost reminds me of I don't know if you've ever read the novel Dear Mr. Henshaw, how we kind of get the story told through the journal writing of the student. So very creative way to tell the story, and entertaining too. So we also know by the way that she's trying to get other girls on the team that she believes that other girls should be on the team too. Okay, so after watching this video, basically you should know everything you need to know to fill out your worksheet correctly, do your assignment correctly, and hopefully have a little bit of an appreciation, understanding of the story and the author, Judith Viorst. Okay, notice I do have a little bit of time left in here, so I just wanted to show you that. I hope you're happy. The Christmas tree is still up. Here, let me show you. See that? See the Christmas tree in the corner there? So you'll be happy to know it's still up. Okay, 8th graders? All right, we'll see ya.